should have known that for all these years. Yeah, I should have known that for all these years. I guess I knew that for all these years.
Jimmy was a local boy, but he seen much more than the change in the weather. Sitting in a uniform of a three-piece suit and a ribbons from his past. Looking for a little boy at the bar with the mouth. Thinks he's clever now. Dreaming of the day that he got torn from a war to his childhood sweetheart. Now he don't need anyone. There's no one there for him. Just the feeling of an empty place deteriorating. Jimmy was a local boy, but he seen much more than a
There is a bucket going round for the multiple sclerosis to raise just a little bit more money. There it is. If you've got any spare coffers, anything left over, buckets down there, come and add to it because, well, let's try and put something to right. This is our way of trying to put one problem to rights. This is called You Must Be Mad. It's enough to make you cry. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He wanted to see some of the world. Where he came from, he impressed the girl to settle down. He settled down in a hole in the ground. In my training demon. But you hide. I love my sands so die. But I found out, yeah, to make you cry. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He wanted to see some of the world. For uniforms impress a girl. I have a little pride no one here could give. And he wanted to settle down. He settled down in a hole in the ground. In my training, feeling both and leave you know. As killing comes and goes, this one will. But you hide, I love my sands of night. But I found out you're not that kind of life. But I thought you had a lot more sense of life. But I found out you're not that kind of life. But I thought you had a lot more sense of life. But I found out you're not that kind of life. But I thought you had a lot more sense of life. But I found out you're not that kind of life. You must be mad. But I thought you had a lot more sense of life. But I found out you're not that kind of life. But I thought you had a lot more sense of life. But I found out you're not that kind of life. You must be mad. 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 But I've come down to you. Thank you.
Well, my baby drove up in a brand new Cadillac. Ooh, my baby drove up in a brand new Cadillac. Well, she looked at me, Daddy, I ain't never come back. I said, baby, 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 won't you listen to me? Come on, sugar, come on, hear my plea. Well, look at me, boy. Like, oh yeah.
delectable if you're a rockabilly fan, as I am. And who was Vince Taylor, even after all those covers? Seems like no one has any idea who he was. He was a British-born rock and roll singer. On his birth certificate, it said Brian Maurice Holden. He moved to New Jersey when he was about 7 years old, I guess around 19. And even after the Clash did their great version, which, by the way, was done live in the studio on Expect Rocker's Teenage Head, as well as the 60s revivalists in London, the Milkshakes. The rockabilly revivalist on our side of the pond, Brian Setzer, with his orchestra, and even the goofball kind of parody band Manic Hispanic, who changed it to Brand New Impala on the... Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. There's our little history lesson for this week. I tried to give you one. I should have put this out instead back then. It wasn't intended as a live album. I think that's the difference. Is Kickstarter, they knew they were being recorded, whereas this was just a live tape that someone handed them over. Steve Druitt after the gig, and he thought they'd played badly and refused to listen to it. And a journalist friend of his from the UK, a DJ guy, actually played it for him in the car, and that's how he got to know it was a really good record. If you don't know the original version of that song, You Must Be Mad, you should definitely check out the album. It was originally called Is Your Washroom Breeding Bolsheviks, the third of the 3 albums Neurotics made. By then they had shortened their name to just The Neurotics, but it's the same band. One other thing to say about that is all 3 members of the original lineup, Steve Druitt, Colin Dredd on bass, and Simon Lamond. And I'm sad to note, I forgot to mention this last week, that Colin Dredd died last month, age 59, of complications from surgery after a long illness. He'd been sick for many years. In fact, the reason the band broke up right after I saw them in 1988 when they did a massive 3-hour farewell show, I guess it was Fulham. It was Fulham in London. I happened to see it with a fill-in basis because he was too sick to play. He had been suffering from pleurisy. He contracted pleurisy, and that's why they quit. But he soldiered on. I guess it was another about 27 years, and it's still sorry that he died. In fact, Druitt was his friend all the way from that era to now and was at his side when he passed away from this mortal coil. Sad, but what a great live album and another great testament to a life well lived. Before that, the Saints gave us No, Your from Eternally Yours in 1977. I'm going to dedicate that to Shogun and to that kind of soul inflection that Bailey had in his voice, that little soul catch, quite out of old Stax and Motown and Atlantic Records of the 1960s. Is something quite unique to the two of them, I think. Now, to the extent that people know the Eternal Years album, they tend to know either This Perfect Day, one of the singles, or the other single, which was called Know Your Product, K-N-O-W, which is an incredible song with Stax horns, just to drive that point home about their use of soul influences. And in fact, as I mentioned in Shogun, the next album, they even covered songs like Otis Redding songs, for example. But that was a different song from the same album with a similar title. That was No, Your Product. Same sort of kind of droll, kind of, shall we say, satiric and sardonic lyrics and singing there from Chris Bailey. And incredible guitar playing there from Ed Cooper. And incredible bass playing from Al G. Ward, who went on to The Damned the next year in time for Machine Gun Etiquette. And my friend Tony Sanders is, in fact, interviewing Al G. Ward this week for part 2 of our Damned interview in the upcoming Big Takeover. So it all kind of fits together, what I'm talking about here. Not to be like all Rachel Maddow on you or something, but yes, all these people are still alive, still doing things, still looking back, etc., etc. So, wow, was that track from the Saints great. Isn't it relentless? Just keeps building at the repetition, especially the way Ed Cooper just lashes at his guitar. I've always loved that song. That whole album, Eternally Yours, is just an absolute monumental punk rock classic in its entirety, in its repertoire, in its really interesting kind of variety that they throw at you, unlike most albums of that time. Probably because they'd gone back to 1973. They predated punk, and they were the Ramones and the Sex Pistols of Australia, them and Radio Birdman. Before the Saints, we heard the Rifles with Local Boy, a single from 2005, and you can find that on a deluxe reissue of that first album from 10 years ago called No Love Lost that has just come out this year. 10th anniversary remastered deluxe reissue. So a good excuse to play that for you. The reissue has B-sides and unreleased bonus material too, so you might be interested in that, even if, like me, you've loved that band. And Joel Stoker, the singer, guitarist, and songwriter, as much as I have, going back to those days. I should also note that's the re-recorded version they did for that album. There's a different version that was originally put out as a single from a year or two before that, which might even be better, but since we have this reissue, we thought we'd play the album version for you. And we started that Pointed Sticks from their self-titled new third album, the second one since they reunited in 2078 in that band for banding again. They disbanded in 2012, but they have reformed once again, decided they weren't done after all, and they've brought us this new album, and I'm really enjoying it. So I hope you like that set. Let's do a little more of a pop set here, well, hopefully still just as spunky.
She's there on the stand with a gun in her hand and a love that was denied. Believing in fate. She lied there waiting with people who don't say that isn't quite the way that we
I don't wanna see you again. I hear that love is blind. How can I understand when someone says to me, I don't wanna see you again? Why do I cry at night? Something wrong could be right. I hear you say to me, I don't wanna see you again.
As you turned your back on me, you hid the light of day.
I didn't have to play
At being
broken hearted. I know that later on, after love's been and gone, I'll still hear someone say, I don't wanna see you again.
as you turned your back on me, you hid the light of day.
I didn't have to play
At being
broken hearted. I hear that love is blind. How can I understand when someone says to me, I don't wanna see you again. I don't wanna see you again. I don't wanna see you again.
I mentioned that later in the show I was going to tell you about Peter Gordon, and that's because I planned to play them. There they were, Peter and Gordon, with I Don't Want to See You Again. Their third single back in 1964. All three of their first three singles recorded by Peter and Gordon as songs given to them to be hits by their good friend Paul McCartney. Okay, that was no accident too, because Paul McCartney just happened to be dating Peter's sister. Peter's name was Peter Asher, and his sister was a famous actress in Britain, Jane Asher, and she ended up being Paul McCartney's girlfriend for 5 years, eventually even his fiancée, although they never ended up marrying. And they all sort of lived together. So Peter was Paul's good friend, and he kept saying, look, here's a song for you. I didn't record it in the Beatles. You record it, you'll have a big hit. And that worked very well on their first single, A World Without Love. Massive #1 smash in Britain in the height of Beatlemania, but it was also a wonderful song. Probably something he probably should have held on to for the Beatles. Would have been a massive hit for them too. And it worked again with the follow-up later that year, actually I think early '64. They came out with Nobody I Know, another Paul McCartney song, which went to #10 in the British charts. But that third single, I Don't Want to See You Again, was a big flop. As was I Go to Pieces, the fourth one, the one that Del Shannon wrote. Probably decided to do something that wasn't written by Paul McCartney to change up their luck on that fourth one, and it didn't work in England. But oddly, the third and fourth singles were both hits in America instead. They just kept on having hits here instead of where they were from, because I Don't Want to See You Again actually went, let's see, I think #12 in the American charts. No, I'm sorry, #16. It was still a #16 hit in America, and I Go to Pieces was a similar hit. So there you have it, Peter and Gordon, the last time they relied really heavily for a hit from Paul McCartney, though they continued getting some pretty good songs from him as they went along. He seemed to like writing songs and handing them to Peter since they were hanging around together so much. Now, Peter had his own career thereafter beyond Peter and Gordon. He ended up being a manager, producer, original Apple Records A&R man, and eventually senior vice president for Sony Music Entertainment in the 1990s. Quite a prominent executive in the music business. And this year, he was made a CBE, a Commander of the Order of the British Empire. If that sounds familiar, it's because the Beatles themselves were MBEs, members of the Order of the British Empire, and that was the famous honor that John Lennon gave back in protest of the Vietnam War some 5 years after he was originally awarded it. Created quite a stir at the time, but there you go. Peter Asher, quite an interesting guy. In fact, he still plays music now and then. If you go look around, you'll see pictures of him 50 years later playing a gig in Boston. So he still obviously enjoys singing. Well, that was probably more than you needed to know. But I find Peter and Gordon an interesting band, not only because of their connections and the hits they had, but because they were really quite good. And every time I see Peter Asher, I think he has a point that Mike Myers probably did pattern his famous Austin Powers look after the way Peter looked, although it's been disputed since. Well, maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just a happy accident. Before that, a different British act, Martin Newell, has been going a good 35 years himself. We heard All the Lights in This House from his brand new album, Tea Time Assortment. And from when I was reading, his other band, Cleaners from Venus, also have a new album out. So talk about prolific. There's 25 songs on this new solo album. So there's just no shortage of tracks I can pull off and play for you. Now I'll have to go and find that Cleaners from Venus record as well. And from his past, you can also find some releases under his other name, Brotherhood of Israel. So good luck if you want to become Martin Wolf. You probably have to buy like 30 records, but he has great talent as a singer-songwriter. Before that, from Brooklyn, was an act there that wasn't. From Brooklyn, that was Pale Lights with Only an Ocean from their album last year, Before There Were Pictures. That's Phil Sutton's bunch. He's a guitarist from Comet Gain, I believe. I think he was an ex-drummer for them, and a lot of other bands like Soft City. And nothing more to say except if you were around New York in February, maybe you saw them on our 35th anniversary show that we did with a whole bunch of other bands. Another one from Brooklyn and two from way far away. So it was really good fun. They're playing again soon, I think, or they just did. So the Pale Lights are still quite an active band here in New York. Before that, we heard Pop Guns with I'll See You Later, another track from the Pop Fiction album. That is the group from 1986 to 1996, reformed in 2012, and still back with 4/5 of the original lineup. Mainly it's the vocalist Wendy Morgan, people remember, and maybe guitarist Simon Pickles and Greg Dixon. Bassist Pat Watkinson is back as well. First album in 18 years, since 1996, and I'm still loving that, so I'm still playing it for you. And I thought it really fit well after Lisa Michaels. She gave us She Lied from her album last year, Above, Beyond, and In Between. I don't think it's fair how few people outside of Los Angeles know how great Lisa Michaels is. I mean, every time I pull a track out from that and play it, I just feel like singing along. Maybe you do too when you hear her. But she was involved in a collaboration called New Shoe, and she, as I mentioned, she had an older band out of LA called the Masticators. So she's been around quite a while, so she knows what she's doing. But every time she opens her mouth and starts singing, I just feel like it's fun music, and it's also really good music. Well, hopefully that is what you will feel about this next set. You are listening to Big Takeover on on RealPunkRadio.com. Old habits die hard, do they not? After 6 years of being on that station, I've been on this station now for, 9 months. And what a breath of fresh air to be able to play anything I want, which was my only complaint with my last station. They had very strict playlists, although I got to pick the tracks myself. Anyway, this is a demonstration of that. This next band is a group I'd never heard of before, although it's led by a longtime Big Takeover reader named Dan Balak, I guess it was pronounced. He has a collaborator named Paul Lopez, and they have tons of singles out on their Bandcamp page. The name of their band is Angel Falls, not to be confused with Angels Fall, which is a totally different band with also a Bandcamp page. This is a Twin Cities group, and they have a new single out. Again, they're called Angel Falls, not Angels Fall. And this wonderful shoegazy kind of track is called No Breeze.
When the train comes out
Okay, that's me being a little bit cheeky to close that set. Did you like that set? I was going for kind of a windswept vibe. Started out with a couple of shoegaze dream pop songs. Went to a couple of more like chamber pop songs, shall we say, although obviously with hints of dream pop and shoegaze, and then closed with that kind of progressive pop wispy sort of stuff, kind of baroque stuff. And that band was called Nirvana. Funny to think about these days. From 1968, the original UK band called Nirvana, which of course ended up having to sue the much more famous grunge rock band of the late 1980s, early 90s that had that massive blockbuster hit in 1991. So being Nirvana from 60s on was no big deal for almost 3 decades, well, 2.5 decades. And then suddenly it was a very big deal. The bands ended up settling out of court. There was some reports that the UK band got $100,000 or something like that, and both bands agreed they could just continue using their various names without any copyright infringement, and the American band didn't have to change their name of their band to Nirvana US or anything like that. So it kind of worked out. But that song was called Rainbow Chaser from 1968. The original Nirvana, one of the more progressive bands on that scene. In fact, they're often credited for doing among the first real big concept albums in England around the time that the Pretty Things were doing SF Sorrow, and before the Who did Tommy and stuff like that. They were mainly the London-based duo of Irish musician Patrick Campbell-Lyons and a composer from Greece by the name of Alex Spyropoulos, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And they were no chopped liver, they weren't just like this really obscure band. In fact, a lot of people who are quite famous in the record business either arranged or produced stuff for them, including Chris Blackwell from Ireland, Mike Vickers, Tony Visconti, of course, of T-Rex and David Bowie and Moody Blues fame, Jimmy Miller, known for his work for the Stones, Guy Stevens, who worked with Mott the Hoople and the Clash, Chris Thomas from the Beatles, Procol Harum, all the way through the Sex Pistols, and I think the Clash as well, and Brian Humphreys, who did a whole bunch of stuff like Pink Floyd and Traffic and things like that. So, wow, it's quite an interesting group, and would have been an interesting group even if they hadn't been completely snowballed, shall we say, by a much more famous band 25 years later. Before that, Beach House, nothing to do with Kurt Cobain. That was kind of like a made you look moment, except that it wasn't. I actually think the original Nirvana was rather good and deserved airplay on this show. Beach House is another band that deserves airplay on this show. Their album Depression Cherry just came out, let's see, about 10 days ago, so it's brand new. A good excuse to play Levitation and completely luxuriate in the wonderful vocals of Victoria Legrand. I always think of her when I think of that band, although obviously Alex Scally is the other musician in the group, has a lot to do with that kind of swirly sound that they do. One of the things I like about them, aside from the siren-like vocals of Miss Legrand, is that they aren't kind of a shoegaze dream pop throwback, shall we say. They certainly have elements of that, but they're doing something unique as well, I think, just kind of doing what they can with atmosphere. Is that the right word? I think the interesting thing about Beach House is they always have an interesting atmosphere, which is something I've often thought of Death Cab for Cutie as well. Maybe you noticed it on that track. Death Cab for Cutie is about to play Madison Square Garden in a week or two, which is just shocking to me because I remember seeing them places like Maxwell's for half-full crowds back when they were first starting out and really enjoying their music. So, congratulations to them. They stuck it out. They've never really compromised their sound. They signed to a major label, didn't change at all as far as I can see. And that's true of their new album, which is called Kintasugi. And off of that, we heard El Dorado. That came out, I guess, March 31st, but it still seems like a brand new record to me. I'm still finding new things in it that I like. Again, we do live in that age where it seems like an album that's only about 5 months old seems like super old hat. Didn't used to be that way, but everything works at light speed in the internet age. Before that, by request from Elizabeth Klezowitz, that was a dream pop shoegaze track. No question about it. That was Tender Age, the name of that band. We heard Get High. They are a 5-piece out of Portland, Oregon, not Portland, Maine, and that's their second single. They only have 2 singles out, both of them this year. So far, it's only available digitally, but they're working to put a vinyl 7-inch out in October. But now if you go to their Bandcamp page, you can order that easily, the 2 songs. One other thing to note about Tender Age, I was pretty sure I would like that because that's mixed by Josiah Mazasushi. Or I always pronounce his name right. Excuse me, his name is Josiah Masaji, I think. He's from Light FM, who gets played on the show quite a bunch. In fact, as recently as July, I played a track of his from Light FM. And if you want to see Tender Age, they're out on tour for a month. Mostly the West Coast, but oddly they have some southern dates and even one Midwest gig. I'm not sure why they're coming as far east as Illinois and Tennessee and only doing those 2 shows in the eastern part of the United States. Why not do New York and Boston and D.C. and Chicago? Well, I think they might be doing a Chicago, greater Chicago gig, because anybody from Chicago can make it throughout the state of Illinois. But that is just a very strange tour. They need to play some bigger places for a single route. If it's an expense problem, then you shouldn't come that far, I think, because if you are going to come that far, you should definitely hit the bigger towns. And we started that set with Angel Falls with No Breeze. I'm going to say thank you to Mary Greenfield, my wife. She brought that track to my attention because Dan and her are involved in a website, internet chat room, I guess you could call it, called Mike Loves a Douchebag. And they were talking about something else, and Dan just mentioned that he was making music and that he was a longtime Big Takeover reader, which I knew, and played it for her, and she liked it, and she played it for me. And I said, gosh, I got to play that on my show. That is really worth sharing with our listeners, which is the only criteria I use. My best friends sometimes don't get tracks played on this show. Of course, I won't say who they are. And people I really don't like at all do get songs played on this show. So it's always nice to play songs from people that I've been corresponding with over the years. Dan Bellick with his friend Paul Lopez there. Angel Falls. Again, I went looking for them on Bandcamp, and I went straight to Angels Fall. Angels Fall seem to dominate the Google search of that name. So you have to make sure you insist on Angel Falls. So thanks to Mary for bringing that to attention. At least my attention, and hopefully I'll have brought it to yours, because you have been listening to Big Takeover on RealPunkRadio.com. Got it right that time. I do have one more song for you before I'm going to say sayonara. It's been a while since I played a track from that Granite Shore album that I love so much. Speaking of concept records out of Britain, only not from the 60s, we have one from these days, and we also have a dog that will not shut up outside, so I'm going to beg your pardon. I do record these shows live, so you get what you get. But anyway, Granite Shore is going to give us a track called Be That As It May, and since it's the closing track from that new album called Once More From the Top, the Watershed record from Granite Shore, I'm going to close my show with it. And again, if you don't know who they are masterminded by Nick Hallowell of the Great Occultation label, and he's called in his friends of yesteryear, Phil Wilson from the June Brides, Mike Kelly from the Only Ones, and Steve Perrin and Mike Finney from the Distractions, and Martin Brahma from the Blue Orchids and the Fall to help him on this album. And I just heard from Nick, in fact, that they are recording a new Distractions album now, since Nick has kind of joined that band, and they put out a album last year, which is great news to people who've been following that band for 35 years. And with that, I'm going to say sayonara with Granite Shore with Be That As It May. You have been listening to this show. I say thank you as well to Tommy and Scott over at the station, and Jim Santo here at BigTakeover.com for all the help they give me every week on the show, and to you for listening. I couldn't do it without you and all of our Patreon.com sponsors. It really is a joy to bring you this music every week. So with Granite Shore, I say see you later. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
There are some things set in stone, and it's best if they're left well alone. Our positions marked, the hierarchy set. All the ghosts have joined us too. The ideas, the songs, the people who we left behind. Have they caught us yet?
Be that as it may, you must still have something left. to say.
I'm not sure that I do, though there were moments when I felt the earth move and the ice caps melt, though it sometimes seemed we were held in place by twine. Even then I never knew if the rest of you could feel it too, or if the only blood that ever thrilled was mine.
Be that as it may, someone has to count us off, and you know none of us can stay. Be that as it may, this could be our one last chance.
Okay, once more from the top.
Be that as it may, it's cold in here and won't get warmer.
Sometime even I'll go gray.
Be that as it may, we fought like cats and dogs.
But we are free, especially when we play.
Be that as it may.
I fell and hit the ground. And as I talked through the fair, I could feel her presence near. I know she's close to me. Oh, she wants, she's gone again, but it's not for me.
Place down for myself, but you know the time if you don't open your mouth. Thinking me is funny, spending lots of money, then go to Dr. Crippy.
But you died dead, and none was all you left. I think you must have cursed us with your dying breath. So you've opened these for us, so why are we making all the fuss? Sure, tropes, and convince poisons us. Crippies, from a near, crippies, from a far. The last thing we wanted was a rat close one bar. Say they wanna see young people having fun. One them looking for a pint of beer isn't how it's done. Doctor, please don't stay. Take your nasty friends away. Give us somewhere we can play. 'Cause the big day keeps you away. Doctor, cure my headache. Get out of one day, blow your boat to another day. Doctor, cure my pain for your boys and down the drain. There's so much fun, they all get smashed, our balls get smashed. People slashed up kibbies, from a near kibbies. From afar, the last thing we wanted was a rat first one bar. Say they want to see the people having fun. One them for a pint of beer isn't how it's done. Doctor, please don't stay. Take your nasty friends away. Give us somewhere we can play. Bring the day keeps you away. Doctor Crippy's first time to go. Plain old Crippy's not in the know. Churchill and Big first joining the show. That's no Rolls Royce, don't you know? I am the doctor, and all come down here. I am the doctor, from far and from near. Saturday night, I doctor your beer. I poison the kid who's got new ideas.
Vampires, mortgage lights in
Look at you with your mouth watering. Look at you with your mind reeling. Why don't we just admit it's a number? Just the girl you want. She's the girl you want. Just the girl you want. She sings from somewhere that you can't see. She sits at the top of the greenest tree. She sings out in the room of undefined loves. Trips up down in the midst of a bow. She's the girl you want. Just a girl you want. Look at you with your mouth watering. Look at you with your mind spinning. Why don't we just admit it's over? Just the girl you want. She's the girl you want. Just the girl you want. She's the girl you want. Just the girl.
It's happened before and it'll happen again. You got beat up because you didn't look like them. Find them jump from the back of your head and pound you to the ground with the back of your head. Kill, 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 kill. Kill, 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 kill. Anger causes violence and stupidity. But I can't stop myself from getting angry. I sometimes wish I had a gun so I could go kill everyone. I'm sick of being pushed around and living in a world of your head. Kill, 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 kill. Kill, 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 kill. Every 3 minutes a woman will get raped. Every hour someone will get murdered. Every second someone gets assaulted by somebody else. It's a human interaction, guns and rape and war and violence. The fighting never seems to end. The fighting never seems to end. Will the fighting ever end? Will the fighting ever end? Kill, 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 kill. Kill, 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 kill. People are divided into different groups, and then they're led to war against another. Time and time and time again, the cycle never seems to end. Two opposing sides collide, and violence is the way they will decide who's right. Kill, 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 kill. Kill, 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 kill. Ignorance and prejudice in everyone. Having humans evolve into shit. No one's willing to sit down and settle problems peacefully. Instead, they solve their problems with their fists and guns and war and violence.
this place. Read myself and spit it in your face. Cancer running through my veins. Fucked up and I'll never change. Oh man, I'm a fuck up, and you know it, baby. That's why I love me so much. I'm a fuck up. I'm a fuck up. I'm a fuck up.
Deep in the rainforest between the Rockies and the Pacific Ocean lives a tribe so barbaric, so inhumane, that it defies God's existence. These people, this race, is Zorch Radio, and each week they cannibalize the airwaves of RealPunkRadio.com. Here, brutal, blasphemic rituals become sacred feasts every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. Relish the rips of the innocent with rampant rockabilly. Savor the sloppy, savage slurps of instrumental surf. Tear through the chewy tendons of trash. Gulp the ghastly and gruesome gallons of garage. Sink your teeth into Zorch Radio. Thursday nights from 7 to 10 p.m. on RealPunkRadio.com. Guaranteed to leave you full and satisfied. You have been invited.
Hey, this is Kevin from K-Punk, and somewhere right now, somebody is having the best orgasm of their life, and it's not you. You're listening to RealPunkRadio.com.
It's getting hard to fill these
you pray for rain? The world turns to a desert while you pray for rain. And I have faith in me, faith in things that I can see. And I have learned some things about devotion. Stop judging me, and I won't judge you. We're all looking for our truth, and we are only tiny droplets in the ocean. Drops in the ocean, drops in the ocean, drops in the ocean.
I realize the situation at this time can't be verified. But I know if I was you and I was standing in your shoes, I'd be terrified. Cause the only thing that I'm good for is wanting to blame. But I had no one to scream at, nobody to blame this time. I got solutions, all I have is motivation and energy. I feel so powerless, I just wish that I could do anything. And I just